What's going on, Mavericks? I want to tell you the story of Lee and Wells. Lee and Wells were classmates, and every Friday they had to take a spelling test. Wells would always score either a 90 or 100. He would always get an A on his spelling test. Spelling came easy to Wells. He didn't even have to study for the test, and he still got A's. All their classmates viewed Wells as one of the smarter kids in class. Every time when he would get back a spelling test and it would be an A, he would always say, another one. Then there was Lee, and Lee had what's called dyslexia, and that meant things such as reading, writing, and spelling were extremely challenging to Lee. Lee would always get either 50 or 60 on his spelling tests. When he would get his spelling test back, he wouldn't get sad, he wouldn't get angry, he would always just say, I gotta get better. Lee was viewed as one of the kids that weren't that smart in the class by his classmates. Then one day when the spelling test came back, Lee grabbed it, he looked at it, he saw he got a 75, and his face lit up. He said, I did it, I finally got a 75, I figured it out. And then Wells looked at him and Wells said, you understand a 75 is barely passing. You got satisfactory. What are you so happy about? And he laughed at him, and their classmates laughed at Lee too. Lee looked at him and he said, listen, you wouldn't get it. Then they had to take a history test. When they took this history test and the results came back, the tables turned. Wells had scored a 65. It was the lowest that Wells had even ever gotten. His classmates were shocked. Wells was angry. He said, this is stupid. History is so dumb. It's a stupid class. We don't even need it. This doesn't mean anything. Played it off like that. Lee got his test back. He scored 100. He got the highest grade in the class. And when he got his grade back, he just looked at it, he smiled, he didn't even say anything. This pattern would continue. Lee kept continuing to get a little bit better at spelling. He even got an 85 one day, and that was the highest grade he ever got. I wish you guys saw him that day. And Wells, well, his history grades weren't that hot. One day when Wells got his history test back, he had scored a 45, and he snapped. He went off on the teacher, he went off on the students, talking about how dumb this was, how stupid this was, how it didn't mean anybody. He even said, what, everybody, you guys think you're smarter than me? And the class was shocked because Wells was supposed to be one of the smartest kids in class. On that day when Wells snapped, he got a detention. So after school, Wells is in the teacher's classroom serving his detention, and Lee walks in. Wells looks at Lee and he says, what are you doing here? Why are you here? You don't have detention. And Lee says, well, I have to stay after school every day so that I can study for the spelling test on Friday. That's how I've been able to get 75s and 80s, is because I've been working extra hard. Wells looked at him, he said, well, that's pretty smart. Lee then went up to Wells and he said, hey, I think I can help you with history. What Lee said was, he said, when it comes to spelling, just looking at the letters and the words, it doesn't make sense to me. So what I have to do is I have to write it down a bunch of times so I memorize what the words look like. Then when I take the spelling test, I imagine what the word looks like in my head, and then I write down the letters based off of the picture in my head. So Wells, what I think you should do with history is I think you should look at pictures, and when we're going over events in history, watch videos on them. And those images might help you remember the history lessons a little bit better. Wells turned and he looked at Lee and he said, I get it. I finally get it. That's pretty smart. You're a lot smarter than everybody says you are. The lesson here is you can't measure success based off of a number. You see, yeah, Lee didn't get 100s. He got 75 and 85s. But the amount of work and the challenges that Lee had to overcome just to get that 75 or that 85 was a huge success. And in life, we can't compare ourselves to other people and compare our success to other people because we don't have to overcome the same challenges. Some things come easy to other people. And maybe you don't do as well as them, but you overcome harder challenges. You go through a tougher time, which is a much greater success in life. With people with disabilities like Lee, dyslexia, emotional disabilities, physical disabilities, mental disabilities, they're some of the smartest people in this world because they have to figure out ways to overcome challenges that nobody else has to face. They have to put themselves on an equal playing field with people that are considered normal by working harder. You see, Lee worked harder than everybody else just to get closer to Wells. The other thing is this, the advantage that you have with dealing with a disability and fighting challenges in your life. You learn to deal with challenges. Everybody, every single one of us will be challenged in our life at some point or another. And when you've been challenged so much every single Friday when you take a spelling test, and you've figured out how to cope with that and overcome that, when you get challenged later on in life, in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and in your 50s, it's not going to be the end of the world. You're going to sit there and you're going to say, hey, I got this, I got to be better. However, the disadvantage that Wells has, yes, he got A+ on his spelling test, but Wells had never encountered a challenge before. And then once Wells was challenged by the history test, he snapped. He broke down. So I just want you guys to know that no matter what your challenges are in life, don't compare your success to somebody else's, because the challenges we have to overcome are dramatic. And also, always lend out a helping hand. If you see somebody struggling, always try and help them out, because you don't know what they're going through. It's hard for us to say who the smartest kid in class is. Oh, and by the way, my middle name is Lee.